Good evening. My name's Daryl McCaig. I'm on the board of directors of Kansas City Jazz Alive. We're so thankful to have you here this evening. Also on our board this evening, we've got our president, B.J. Jansen, that's in the house, Emily Bierman, and Demetrius Smiley. And then one of our founding members, Steve Hargrave, is in the house as well, so just to recognize them. We've got a great panel tonight. I'm really excited about this, but before we can get started, it's always an obligation. I have to give a bunch of thank yous. One of the big thank yous I want to give is to Rick Truman and his staff here at the Folly Theater for what they do for us, setting up this facility and giving us a nice home to do these meetings at. Absolutely. And then, yes, you've bought tickets for this event. That helps to fund some of our costs, but we also do a lot of grants for being able to fund these programs. And so the Kansas City's Neighborhood Tourist Development Fund, the Francis Family Foundation, Muriel McBrien Kauffman Foundation, the Missouri Arts Council, and the National Endowment of the Arts all help make this happen. So without further ado, you didn't come here to hear me talk. I want to bring up my good friend, Steve Kraske from KCR is up to date.
I feel like I'm coming on to host an episode of The Price is Right. Welcome, everybody. So good to have you all here. Yeah,
Buzz.
Yeah, buzz. Yeah, bang it, yeah. Hey, tonight, we're going to sort of continue a conversation we did last time, talking about the future of jazz through the eyes of performers from 3 different generations. And I'll let you all decide which generation each of these guys is coming from. I think you'll figure it out here. Yeah, there you go. Great panel, as Daryl said. Michael Pagån, pianist, composer, arranger, band leader. Chris Hazelton, the organist. Henry Scamurra, saxophonist, composer. Give them a round of applause for being here tonight. And I think you all know, but following tonight, you're all invited to join us. We're going to walk down to the street to the VU Lounge for the open mic down there. And Michael's going to host that, so you're all welcome for that too. But Michael and Chris, let me start with you guys here. You both have lived, you performed on the East Coast. How does the Kansas City jazz scene compare, Chris, to what you've seen elsewhere?
This is not going to be a popular answer, but it doesn't.
Okay.
And I
you can grab that mic out of there if you want to do it. Yeah.
So I'm not crouching. Yeah, I mean, I've lived on the East Coast, and I've had a chance to travel a lot of the country, actually, in the past couple of years, and kind of get a feel for scenes in other cities. The main difference for me is where we have a absolute wealth of talent and creativity, we're really lacking in true performance venues. Other cities I've been to, and even just regionally, have venues where people buy tickets and they see a show. And without jeopardizing my employment in this city, there's not a space in this city where a show is presented, where the lights are dimmed, the conversations are kept low or none, and musicians are introduced by an MC. There's just a lot of aspects that I have seen in other cities that's like, man, we don't have that here.
So the performance culture isn't what it needs to be.
Correct.
In Kansas City.
Yeah.
How big of a problem is this?
I mean, I think it's a pretty big problem, honestly, because there's a lot of musicians in this town that are teetering on the brink of like, do I stay here or do I go somewhere where things are happening?
You're hearing a lot of that.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Michael, your friend used to be well employed as a player in town. He no longer is. How can you help him get jobs in the future here? Do you agree with what Chris just said?
Hi, everybody. I'm
grab that
I'm
thing.
doing my mic check. Yeah. Okay. I agree partially with you, Chris. I don't agree 100% with that, just from my perspective.
Why don't you pull this thing out?
Okay.
and use it?
Okay.
That might be
Yeah.
We'll hear you a little better.
I love it when you go to a wedding where somebody like gets the mic and they go, "Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?" And then you go, "No. You have to get like this. Mouth on metal, baby. I taught vocal jazz for 14 years. Here we go." Little over the top. One point that you made, Chris, about not being introduced, I feel that, and I agree with you on that. And there are other clubs. We can name names. I mean, in Cleveland, at Nighttown, at the Jazz Showcase, there's somebody there to introduce the artist, and it makes a real difference. And it could be done here. It could be done. It's really easy to do if the musician themselves makes the request, if the musician is making the request to the owner of the establishment.
But why should that have to happen?
Well, let's play it out, you know? Let's play it out. It's probably not the best way to go about it. If most of these musicians, the local cats that play in Kansas City, a lot of them represent themselves. They don't have an agent or a representative who's going to say to the club owner, "Maestro would like to be introduced." You know, so that kind of falls flat. So I do agree with you that it's kind of a culture thing, and I really would like to see that because it would only enhance the experience for everybody. So I really. My wife is the one who's heard me bitch about that more than anybody else until tonight.
I mean,
so
does the Blue Room come closer to what we're talking
they do
about?
it. They
That's the closest.
Yeah,
That's my
that's the
sense.
closest thing
Yeah.
to it. Yeah, and then the thing about ambiance and creating a respectful atmosphere by refraining from super loud talking and being an attentive and respectful audience while still feeling comfortable and feeling like you can chat and all that, but still thinking about the music. I agree with that a lot too.
Yeah.
The thing about saying there's no comparison, that's where I'll part company with you, because every big city has a scene, and this is jazz music. It's very alive, and it's a world thing, and every big city has a scene. You just have to get to know that. You know, Denver's different from Minneapolis, is different from Dallas, is different from Cincinnati, et cetera, et cetera. And once you get to know those folks, the world's a beautiful place. So I just want to keep that positive.
For sure. I agree with that, yeah.
Henry, what's your take on this? And again, why don't you grab the mic?
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
there.
Is this, everybody can hear me? Good? Okay. Yeah, I think it's a general cultural thing as well as a venue thing where there's, I feel like my experience is maybe a little different as someone who's newer to the scene and younger, to where I'm not necessarily always expecting to be introduced like that. I have kind of like different requirements for feeling like catered to appropriately by a venue. But could you repeat like the very core question?
I mean, is there? We're talking about what Chris was saying about the need for more clubs where the music is respected, the performers are respected with an introduction, and he's making the point that culture of going into a club, paying money, sitting back quietly and listening to you guys work your magic, that isn't happening enough here in Kansas City.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that the issue that I see with that is the Kansas City's urge to hold on to the past sound of KC jazz and not moving forward into the more progressive ways that clubs are building a following today. And like,
How does that manifest itself? Are you told, hey, we want to hear traditional Kansas City swing, or you're just discouraged from playing more progressively?
no, I don't think it's something that's overtly told, but there's definitely in the marketing of a lot of clubs, this idea of coming to Kansas City for like the Kansas City swing. And I often look to the like other arts worlds, like specifically visual arts, like an institution like the Charlotte Street Foundation or other foundations that have places that don't ever have music, but are better spaces to perform like thoughtful music where people are creative, young people are coming to listen and care about the music that's just outside of music venues in general. The next places I'm looking to play at are like art museums, places that don't have this like wearing veneer of what people think they're going to come here. Like and I think that maybe comes back to club owners trying to cater to that, and there being not a space for innovation and for people to like come hear new music. I mean, that's my perspective from someone who's like new.
Well, as a young player, how discouraging is this, what we're talking about, this dearth of clubs that can give you what you're looking for?
It definitely makes me feel like Kansas City isn't sustainable for me, especially as a horn player, because most of the gigs are restaurant gigs, which is already, there's something to that. And then they're all downsizing. There's less money being put into it. So the real way I can see making money as a horn player, but liking to play with 3 or 4 other people is through foundations that are funding arts and have a pre-built-in following of young people, young creative people that are like interested in what a young voice would have to say.
And that's a tough way to do this then, right? That's a tough way to make money.
Yes and no. I think like there's a lot to be learned outside of the music world. I just see the Kansas City jazz scene as being very like antiquated in a lot of ways. A lot of clubs feel like 1995, and I was not alive in 1995, but I imagine it felt like that back then.
Well, Henry...
I need to go now.
Yeah. I was going to say, Henry, to hell with you, but yeah, you know. Well, before we walk away from this point, Chris, I mean, how can this organization help with what you're talking about? What's the answer? I mean, what's the fix here?
In an immediate space of time, I mean, I think the resources that are missing currently are a better marketing machine for the music that's being produced here.
And we hear that every time we meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, social media is toxic. We can all agree on that.
Right.
If it wasn't for being a musician, I would have been off of it a decade ago. But it's really the only avenue that I have at my disposal to market what I'm doing. So, I mean, just having, unfortunately, it all comes back to money. It always comes back to money. I don't have money to spend on advertising based on what I'm making for playing music. So I'm reliant on either the free avenues that are at my disposal or the venues or organizations advertising for me. And oftentimes that's not happening, or any adequate amount of it. And beyond that, I would say, not just marketing, but, there's great music being created here all the time. There's insane amounts of talent living here and creating. Having a record label to get stuff out on that's actively pumping to radio across the nation, and in having proper distribution, these kinds of things could be funneling tourism to come to Kansas City and hear what's going on here, not what went on here.
There's an opportunity for tourism, you think?
Absolutely.
Jazz tourism, music tourism.
I mean, I've traveled to so many parts of the country in the past year, and when I say I'm from Kansas City, people immediately have an association to the jazz that happens here.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I think that the city as a whole is really not utilizing that as a catch. I mean, from a city level.
Henry, how are you marketing yourself? I mean, how important an aspect is that to your career? How are you approaching that? How could this organization help with that?
I'm definitely utilizing social media, like Chris said. but it only goes so far. I'm not sure yet for an answer on that specific question, other than for like on a personal level, it's social media. But I do agree that I think venues, like specifically jazz venues too, could do a lot better job of
Getting the word out.
Getting the word out. Yeah. I think it was interesting that both you two talked about like other contemporary clubs in other Midwestern cities, and I think we could like very easily look to those as, I mean, they've set up the framework for a successful club, like Dakota in Minneapolis, Jazz St. Louis in St. Louis, like live streaming things, having more things out as a venue to where all of the ticket sales are not left on the individual. Like it doesn't feel like there's really a good, I don't know, in a perfect world, I imagine an artist and a venue are both bringing their audiences together to create the audience for the event.
Right.
And thus, that's like a cooperative unit. But as a performer, I've very rarely played a space where most all of the people aren't people that are like there who've already know me.
Right.
Or know my music.
Michael, as our senior statesman here, dude, I hate to break that to you, but what answers are you seeing here? What is the path forward when it comes to this concern about lack of clubs that are doing this the right way?
Well, I do my own social media promoting for my own gigs, and then I tag the club. And then when I go to the page of that club, and I'm talking about Facebook right now, I'm not talking about Instagram, but I do that too. Then I see all the photos that are tagged photos versus the photos that are original photos from that place, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of have to learn how that works, and I've learned a little bit about it. I take it upon myself to put that out there, and then hopefully the folks who hired me, they see that I'm making an effort, and then they're making an effort too. They're making an effort too, and that's about the size of it, really.
Chris, what's the trajectory of the business in Kansas City? How have you seen it change? How have you seen it evolve during the course of your career? And based on that, where are we heading?
It goes in a lot of waves. I've noticed. I mean, this year marks my 20th year of playing professionally, and it seems like it through various factors just comes in waves. I feel like right around 2010, 2012, there was like lots going on. There was lots of work to be had. There was, and then Jardine's closed, and then, man, now everybody's scrambling for the same gigs. And then Take 5 came on, and we had a space where you could create very freely, and they were all ages.
What place is this you're talking about?
Take 5 Coffee.
Take 5, yeah, right.
And so, it just kind of ebbs and flows as clubs come and go and opportunities come and go.
Is there anything unique about that to Kansas City, or is that just the way the world
No, I
works?
think that's just the way the world works.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, everything's tight. Every industry is tight right now. So I think that's not unique to this industry at all. And I understand that, business is business. People gotta make money to keep the doors open. But I do think that there has, like we've been talking about, there are recipes for success out there that new venues could be modeled after.
When you hear that, someone like Henry Scamurra is thinking, not sure how long he can last in Kansas City, Michael, based on the scene as it is today. What do you think about that? And that's really hard to hear.
Yeah, it's hard to hear, but it's a reality. We don't make a living, a decent living, playing jazz music, but nobody does. The only people who made a good living, now we could go down that road of, well, define good. What do you mean? Are you talking a 6-figure income, a 7-figure income? I'm being real serious right now. I know that Chick Corea didn't have to rely on a teaching gig, but Chick Corea was like Mozart. He was a freak.
Right.
So was Keith Jarrett. These are the exceptions
Right.
to the rule. If we're looking at the large numbers, people of that ilk, people like, Charlie Parker, Oscar Peterson, Ella Fitzgerald, people of this truly meteoric stature are not the normal. There's a lot of really great players who aren't of that level, and also there's this thing about stardom and fame. But getting back on track, to make a living, most folks have a day job or wind up teaching, and that's it. So you're not going to make a living playing concerts and clubs unless you're really, really in demand and even then, you're taking guest spots at lecturing and doing clinics and things for top dollar. So it's a matter of looking at that and I'm not saying anything these guys don't already know. I mean, maybe everybody in this room gets that. But still, we like to be ideal, and we like to try to think about, well, how can we make this better?
Henry, I'm interested in exploring your world a little bit more. When you're out there, are you playing with other players your age, or are you playing with older folks? How does it end up working for you?
I have a consistent band that's all people my age, like 21 to 24 years old. It's a pretty small, 23 to 21. We're very close in age, actually, but that kind of just lucked out.
Are there opportunities to play with folks who are older, a generation or two?
Yeah, I try to anytime I can, but I don't see age being as big of a factor as some other things where there's I feel a very strong identity to the music that I write and the music that I want to perform, deliver to people. So when it works out that there's a person, I don't know. I think it's such a small scene. It's hard to think about it as like old cats, middle. Like I just don't think about it like that. But like recently, I did a hit with Brian Stever and Jeff Harshbarger, and those are two. I mean, Stever's been on the scene for forever. He's not old. He's in his whatever.
Smart
man.
man.
So sorry. I'm so
Stever's
sorry.
younger than me, Henry.
Very smart man, Henry. Yeah.
But Jeff is older. But I don't know. I wasn't thinking about needing to hire someone of a certain age group.
Right.
It was just I appreciate their artistry, and I wanted their touch in the music that I was trying to orchestrate and bring to an audience. So I do when I can, but...
So as someone who's just out of UMKC, how hard has it been for you to establish yourself on the scene?
Hard. I get a lot of not responses from emails, from venues that I think, I mean, not to sound arrogant, but I think the music that I produce would sound great in that space and would work for that audience, like, and just like radio silence. So that's definitely something that I've thought about a lot as a young performer, is feeling like Kansas City is very set in its ways of
club owners just going with the folks they know, the folks they've worked with forever.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not. I don't have any sort of like contention about that, because I know that that's just how that works. Like it just is what it is. But it has definitely left me very curious to find my own paths for things.
So you studied at UMKC.
Still am, yes.
You're still
last
there.
semester, yeah.
Last semester. Has it been worth it?
Yes, but I'm on academic and music scholarship, so it hasn't been a super big financial burden, but I'm like very fortunate to have that situation be that it is.
Has that experience, to what extent has it helped prepare you for the real world of going out and trying to make a living doing this stuff?
In some ways, very much so, yes, but in other ways, no. Like they The business side of things, not so much. But musically, knowing how to be prepared for something has definitely, like I've worked those chops up at UMKC.
We've talked with this group, KC Jazz Alive, about putting on workshops that might actually, help with the business side and the marketing side and the social side, all that stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, I was booking for a band that I made like sophomore year of high school. So I've been like booking and working with stuff like that for a minute, and it seems like something that third-party organizations helping with stuff like that does help to an extent, but then there's also I realize that the people that make it in the music industry, or not make it, but continue to do it, are the people that really want to have it for themselves. So
Right.
I've noticed that a lot of my peers that have, or maybe just elder peers, people late 20s, the people who've stuck around playing music, are the people that figured that out for themselves.
Chris, as you listen to Henry talking here about trying to establish himself, what can you pass on to him that might help pave the way?
Man, I've spent stupid amounts of time just
Trying to figure that
digging
out.
and
Yeah.
finding things out and asking questions. And I mean, yeah, because you're right. I mean, in the kind of organized educational world, there's not a lot of education in regards to how do I make this sustainable for myself on a business level. Things about like registering your songs with a PRO and how to submit your set lists every time you play those songs, and you get money because that's what that company does. I didn't know that coming out of college. I had to find that out the hard way. And I mean, there's so many little nuggets that I've discovered along the way. And man, feel free to ask me. I'm not a gatekeeper. I'll share anything I know, and that's an invitation to anybody.
And we did a panel on some of that a year or so ago. I don't remember when it was, but what struck me about it was, I don't think I'm out of school in saying this, Bobby Watson, some of that stuff was new to him.
Yeah.
Because the world has flipped around so much.
And there's so many people of older generations that I've talked to that like they don't know stuff, and it's insane how much you really have to be in the know to know some of this stuff. And yeah, like I said, I've spent a lot of time making mistakes and getting dirty and digging and finding answers, and I'm still learning on a continual basis how to do things and how to get my foot in the door at places, and it's frustrating, to say the least. Yeah.
I mean, Michael, you've taught at UMKC. Does the school, I teach at UMKC, does it need to do a better job on this business side of things, or does this organization need to fill gaps there, or what would be your 2 cents?
I would say that some of the aspects of the music business, maybe they could ramp up on that and maybe be a little bit more covering more bases. Sometimes they'll hire an instructor who may be an adjunct, or if they're a full-time instructor and they're assigned to do that, then they're going to teach it according to their gifts and their expertise and their experience base and all that. Yeah. And there's always going to be some gaps there. So that's where, maybe inviting a guest from a PRO, somebody from Nashville or wherever to, somebody from, ASCAP or BMI or one of the other ones, and have them walk you through those things. Because Chris is right, man. I go on the YouTube and watch a YouTube about how to register your song, and it's pretty daunting. And I started out in Cleveland, Ohio. In 1982, I met Al Serafini, the late Al Serafini, and he was a regional BMI rep. Now, guys, this is before the internet. He used to go from club to club, and he would tell the guys that they have to pay, and then they put the sticker in their door, right? The ASCAP sticker and the BMI sticker. And he would say, well, you can say no to me, or you can talk to a judge. That's how it's going to go. And I started learning from him, and there was a big difference in age. I was in my early 20s, and I started doing that. But the other thing was, since he was going around to these clubs doing that as a field rep, he was getting it in. He would chum up with these guys, and he'd get tons of gigs. He'd get a lot of gigs, and I was introduced to that whole scene at a very early age. So that was pretty cool.
So, Henry, what are your typical gigs? What are you doing out there? And where can people come see you play?
Most frequently I'm playing at, recently it's been either Vine Street Brewing, Westport Coffee House Theater,
Sure.
or playing some as a sideman at like Corvino, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And who are you playing with? Tell me about your partners in crime here.
So my band is Isaiah Petrie on vibraphone, Spencer Reeve on bass, and Jade Harvey on drums. We started, I kind of wrote music with that group in mind because I've admired all their playing for a while. And so we've kind of accidentally came into this thing where we were playing consistently as a quartet for a minute, and it just got to this point where we had... I haven't been told by enough audience members that it was a valuable thing to keep pushing forward with, and we all felt the same, that it just stayed that way.
Feels right, yeah. How are you getting the gigs that you're getting?
Emailing, talking to people, getting to know the owners of places. I mean, I'm only just starting, but in my short time so far, it's felt like something where restaurants are not the end goal, and kind of to tag on to the idea that we're not ever going to make, especially not as a horn player in Kansas City, I'm never going to make my living performing. So however I make the rest of it, I want the gigs that I do to be like meaningful and something that the audience doesn't just say, oh, that was cool, but like can feel something.
So as we're talking here tonight, how do you plan to supplement performance pay? What's the plan?
I'm on scholarship, between scholarship and performing right now. That's how I'm making a living. But after this semester, there's a cool like garden center on Trust, a few blocks away from my place, that I think would be fun to work at. I want to get better at gardening. So.
Soil and service?
Yeah, soil service.
It's a great place.
Yeah, they were so sweet last time I went in. I was like, man.
Kansas City has a long history of being a jazz town, Chris, but today jazz only makes up a small part of the market. What's your vision for the future of jazz in Kansas City? Where do you see this going? How do you see it evolving?
That's a complex question.
We ask heavy questions here at KC Jazz Alive.
I mean,
this is not for pikers. Yeah.
I do think that we tend to put jazz in a bubble, and I don't think that that's a healthy thing, because it's
something onto itself and separate.
Yeah, I mean, jazz is an amalgamation of so many styles and moods and histories and forward thinking, and I think a lot of the success that I've had in playing music has not been in jazz. And it's because I've been willing to kind of put myself out there and explore soul music, or explore gospel music, or explore blues. There's really strong scenes in Kansas City for all of those genres, and there's such a unique opportunity to kind of intermingle and co-create with other things outside of jazz. Mm-hmm. And even some of the most beautiful things that I feel like I've created have been jazz or jazz adjacent, So I would say, I don't think anybody should compromise their artistic vision necessarily, but I do think, and as Henry said, I think it's important for us to think outside the box and figure out how do we kind of spread this into other things that are not just put in this box.
Yeah. Michael, future of jazz here, what are you thinking?
A lot of really a lot of good things are being said. A lot of these guys are making great points. So I can only agree with all that. I'm you know, at my stage of the game, when I look for work or when I play at a venue, I'm not really looking for a gig or trying to get that club owner to like me per se. Hey, he's a cool guy. Let's give him a try. I'm past all that, honestly. What I want to do is I want to be of value to someone. I don't care about success even. I mean, rather than thinking of being success, well, you could say, well, what's your goal? You could say it that way. Well, then my goal is to be of value. I want somebody to think, you got to get Pagån. There's nobody else. That's what, because that's what I've been taught, and that's what I've seen. And my heroes, the artists and the artistry that I aspire to continually. I'm young too. I mean, I'm still learning too. But what I aspire to is to be valuable to something or somebody, to be a real value add. And if I think of that and not think about, you know, the calendar will fill. The calendar will fill up and it'll take care of itself. And you know what? You have a blowout. You get a flat tire and you didn't see it coming. You have some bad nights. You do have some things that don't go good. I've had them. And guess what? The older you get, the more they hurt. And the more, and hopefully the fewer and farther between they are, but you just say to yourself, damn, I should know better than to let that happen. But you know what? You just pick yourself up and keep going. And there aren't very many of them, you know. I'm not trying to go dark, but I am not, you know. But I'm just saying that even trying to be of value to somebody, some folks just aren't going to hire you.
Yeah.
So move on.
I want a couple more, then I'll ask the audience to chime in here. How about drawing younger audiences to jazz, Henry? Is that happening? When I go to the Blue Room, I'm always impressed, how crowded it is. I always go on weekend nights because that's when I can go. And I'm always impressed by the number of young people who are there. I mean, it's full of young people. Mm-hmm. We're talking dozens and dozens a lot of nights. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's where there's the weird Kansas City jazz identity crisis of we're still trying to pitch it as this old swing music, which, I mean, not to say that swing isn't an integral part of it, but old, we can't even claim bebop. We try and go back to territory band type stuff, and that's just not what it sounds like anymore. So it is nice when I do see young people out there, but I think it's weird that we kind of try to market towards older folks. And so I don't know, I often find myself looking towards creative communities outside of jazz, going and collaborating with visual artists or with poets. I've done a lot of that. I'm trying to work on a piece with dance with my band right now, but we'll see where that all goes. But I think with how small of a scene Kansas City has in all of these things, the only way we're going to survive and make something meaningful that a meaningful amount of people will see is by collaborating with people outside of jazz. I mean, all of the greatest jazz musicians and greatest influences throughout jazz have been from pulling outside of jazz. So I think this weird Kansas City, let's look back at jazz, is great to do at the conservatory, but when you're trying to make something meaningful, it's what are we doing here?
Yeah.
The thing that I found over a lot of years is there's room to embrace the things that make Kansas City jazz's history while still doing something else. And I say that because in times that I've traveled or played in other cities, I'm not necessarily, I am a little bit more traditional in my playing, but I do, I'm not necessarily playing vocabulary that's unique to the 1960s either. Mm-hmm. But the comment I always get is, dang, y'all from Kansas City swing a different way. And I do think that it's important for us to embrace what has happened and then make something new out of it.
Yeah,
I agree with that. And I don't at all mean to to try and disregard the Kansas City history or tradition. I think it's like our job to be very well versed in understanding it and knowing about it. But yeah, definitely we can make our Kansas City scrappiness known in different ways.
You know, I'm really struck to bring this conversation back around to where we began. I subscribed to Downbeat, and the most recent issue, I think it was the most recent issue, had a thing about clubs around the country and, you know, where to go to hear jazz in America and maybe even the world. And nothing for Kansas City, just nothing. Not the Blue Room, not, you know, Dolphin, not Green Lake, none of that. And I was like, wow, really? And what that says to your original point, Chris, I think is fairly profound here, you know. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Questions, comments from you all? Yes, ma'am.
Shame on us as a city for not promoting that jazz and being in Downbeat.
Yeah. We were just talking to Mike, who was the guy that wrote the column we were talking about? Yeah. Yeah. Just wrote a op-ed type of thing recently talking about, as we've talked about in here so many times, the need for some kind of office at City Hall that is all about promoting not just jazz, but maybe music in general. And he put a very thoughtful column together saying we really got to get into that space. And so many folks here seem to agree with that.
I mean, I will also say that Downbeat and their take on the global jazz scene is very much based on recorded music. And the problem is recorded music that's being made in Kansas City is not getting outside of Kansas City a whole lot, which is where I say, like, I can't stress the importance enough of either finding a label or generating a label that has PR, that has distribution, that has radio reach and has relationships with radio personalities outside of Kansas City. Because, I mean, that really is where a lot of the attention in Downbeat comes from, is from recorded music.
Yeah, good point. Other thoughts? Yes, sir.
The Charlie Parker recent release on Verve was written up in Downbeat, masterpiece, 5 stars.
Yeah, that Chuck Haddock.
I was going to say, and God bless Chuck Haddock doing the Lord's work.
But to other points that were made, that's music from a long time ago and not music of today. You know, but Kansas City's name was out there.
My great-grandfather's name Henry.
Oh, sweet.
You may think you're like new, but
No, I know I'm made from very old stuff.
because I'm 74. I just turned 74 years old. I've been
Happy birthday.
a music lover. My grandfather was a musician. My father was a musician. Our whole family were into music. Okay, I am interested in your sound. I am kind of, tired of the old Kansas City swing. And so how can I learn more about what you're doing? And is it on? Can I stream it? Where can I hear this new Kansas City sound?
Yes, I just released an album like a few days ago that it finally got out on all the streaming stuff.
Wow.
And then I have a website that's just my name.com, henryscamurra.com. That's where you can find me. But as far as how we can do that, I don't know. I think, well, no, I have an idea, but I don't know. I think it does.
You are,
Thank you.
inspirational to me as someone who is looking for new music.
Mhm.
And if you're a product of our community, I want to hear it.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
get it out. And promote it on Kansas City Live.
Yeah.
Jazz Live.
Yeah,
How can we access this? I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. Now that it's out, I feel like I can actually give it I'm starting to work on pitching it to other organizations as like not just here's the thing that's coming eventually. It's no, here's the thing, put it, make it visible, you know. But that's like a personal thing that I'm working on on my weekends. But I don't know. Yeah, I think it comes down to like venue stuff, where like I don't know, the Blue Room doesn't feel like there's much of an interest in any new stuff, and that's really the only consistent club we have, and
Hard to crack that.
very hard to
Get in.
crack it. And oftentimes there's not a lot of like jazz happening there, you know, like it's
shut down during the month of January, by the way.
well, yeah, that
Doesn't
too.
help.
Does not help, but I guess
It's not the first year that's happened either. It's,
Mm-hmm.
become a thing.
Yeah, I just think more spaces that are interested in finding. I mean, there's like a ridiculous amount of talent in Kansas City of all ages. It's just ridiculous how many shows you go to in random coffee shops, and how many contemporaries I know that inspire me and like make really incredible products out of their music and like experiences. And just there's a lack of venues caring about it because it doesn't make them more money per se.
How about
Like,
the Kansas side? I mean, the Missouri is like, I live on the Kansas side. Missouri appears more historical, I guess. Kansas is more modern to me.
I mean, there's a
I get
long
that.
history of where the money in Kansas City lied. You know,
I mean,
that's
my son was a musician. He used to call the Johnson County morons. You know, I gotta pay him. That's a terrible thing to say.
yeah. I mean, that's
But that was his attitude about Johnson County. But I'm thinking, is there an impetus to bring that new music
I mean, I'll
on the Johnson County side?
I'll chime in here and say, yeah, I mean, there's always a void for a club in Johnson County. I mean,
and there's a long and checkered history of clubs in Johnson County. Some
Yeah.
were terrific a few years ago and then walk away, peter away.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Johnson County for a good portion of my life, and there is always a mentality that no, we don't want to drive all the way downtown to see this, even though, come on, y'all, it's only 20 minutes. But nonetheless, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a need for creative venues in the suburbs. I think that's very important. Now, I will also say there is need for diverse, inclusive venues in the suburbs and everywhere. So,
What was that one club that was out south a number of years ago? They were bringing in national acts, and it lasted for a year. It was great. I was out there any number of times, and then poof, it went away. They had great crowds when I was. What's that? Take Five.
yeah, Take Five Coffee. Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
that's right.
Doug and
yeah.
Lori ran. I mean, for several years, ran the best club in town. And it was a listening club, yeah. I mean, and I will say they had a model of success in that they didn't have to rely on just being a jazz club. They were a coffee house during the day. So they were making their money mostly in the mornings, and then the jazz at night was something that they could give proper respect to. Yeah, and I mean, there's a number of clubs. And right now, honestly, there's a great club in Lee's Summit, the 1909 Club, that's really doing well. Great spot to play. Can't commend Seth that's running the place enough. He's doing fantastic.
Is there any place in Johnson County?
Not to my knowledge.
We're drawing blank looks up here. Yeah. Which, I mean, that says something fairly important, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Mayor.
I'll just wander around here. One, thanks for being here. I learned a lot. Appreciate your time. Two, my passive-aggressive nature was when you asked the first question, and Chris said, no, it's not in Kansas City. My immediate reaction was, why are you here? But you're from here. And I mean, I don't want to put the box out. So
I was going to say, yeah, I do love it here. Don't get me wrong.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
We moved, someone said, let's get the mayor and the city involved, but I hear Cheryl say, well, we used to have one, and Emily confirmed that, which means, and government's not the place to do this. I'm not going to run in politics. Arts are not going to be the party funding ever. If you tie your wagons of that, you're going to ultimately fail because something else will come along cultural amenity.
Sure.
As I know, I think I have a piano, an organ, which I believe is probably electronic as opposed to a good old pipe organ.
Right.
And a horn. I don't know what a horn is. Is it brass or?
Saxophone.
Okay, so you're in the reed family, whatever.
Mhm.
And I hear, well, Corvino and all these venues that are not really jazz, they're not performance centers for jazz. Their primary business is not music and jazz and reeds and loud drums or whatever. When I'm having dinner, I want to have a conversation at my table, not be distracted or overwhelmed by the music. By the same token, a piano can do that. I'm curious if you've looked into, and how do we, in Johnson County, serve with this stuff? How do we get, whether it's Wyandotte County Community College, Johnson County Community College, cities with spaces or whatever, how do we plug into those things? And frankly, the schools all have performing arts, theaters or whatever.
And JUCO is doing
Well, next, I think
With some, but it's
very shortly, there's
Some.
gonna be a whole weekend of
but
jazz.
that's once a year for a weekend.
Yeah.
There's nothing sustainable. How do we use community assets that are already there for venues where you want to go listen to the music and maybe you have to sit in a chair in an auditorium versus have a beer with it? So I see all these competing things that we're lumping into one big opportunity.
Yeah.
But nobody owns any of it or organizes any of it. So you build a schedule or a show, program, whatever, around a bunch of these things. Because, we went to the Corvino Club the other day, and honestly, we talked, and there was music going on, but I didn't pay attention because I was there for dinner, and their real motive was turn that table to the next person, and I get that. But if I sat there and listened to music for 3 hours, and, my mind wasn't, and I'm going to a jazz show, but that's what was there. So I just think this is so untangent or whatever, that there's all these things trying to happen, but no one owns it.
Johnson County, my perception is that there's enough resources in Johnson County that if they wanted to have a 5-star jazz supper club, a la Blues Alley in Washington, D.C., a la Jazz Alley in Seattle, even Dazzle in Denver. I'm sure there's a comparable place in Dallas. If they wanted to, if there were investors, who wanted to do that, where you're having the filet mignon or the prime rib or the and the seafood and the really 5-star fine dining, and you're having a real jazz show. These places are not just in the movies from the 1940s. They really exist, but they're very few and far between. I just named a few of them. And personally, I think if there were some investors in Johnson County who had an eye for that, I think that Johnson County as a demographic could sustain that. It would be awesome. But here's the thing. One thing that I've learned through this business, just about every club or venue that I've encountered that really was committed to the jazz, it was usually the owners, and they were into the music from the very start.
Yeah.
And when you try to, if you see a place that looks like music could fly there, you're kind of got your eye out as a gigging musician, and you got your eye, boy, why doesn't that place have music, man? Look at that place. That would be, there's space there. And it took me a long time out. Here's what you're doing. Now, it's like they say in The Godfather, think like other people do. Put yourself in their position and think how they would think. Here's the thing. You're asking me to get rid of how many tables? You're asking me to get rid of a 4-top and a 2-top minimum. Okay, that's 6 for the whole night. Oh, no, permanently. Now you're asking me to bring in musicians and pay them. What was the plan from the start? Whoever had that business, they had a plan in mind for how that was going to work, and music wasn't a part of it. So when you try to impose that or try to introduce it, sometimes this is going to be a flat no. But the folks who really had it as an inspirational thing, usually it's something very special to them personally. It's really something that they are passionate about and care about. Those are the places that have it, and it's not going away, and they figure out how to make the numbers work.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was just said there. I think the appealing thing about Kansas City, and especially for musicians that have moved here, and there has been a lot of musicians that have moved here, is that the cost of living is next to nothing compared to either of the coasts or Chicago or in Nashville. I mean, those places are expensive to live. So there is real opportunity, especially with the talent that's here, if it's presented in the right way as a product. And that's what it is. We're offering a product. Or at least I am. I can't speak for anybody else. But if you are going to put me on the stage, I'm going to entertain. And so it is disheartening to me, and I am in the position now where I have several side hustles, so I don't take every gig that's offered to me. It's not what I would. Yes, I would love to be performing 5 nights a week, but I would rather take the gigs that mean something to me and pay me well. But yeah, these other cities, Rudy's Jazz Room in Nashville is a great example. It's a room that's like the size of what we're sitting in right now. And on a Tuesday night, they present something. People come to see the music. That's what they're offering. So people buy tickets for $25 to sit for one set. They turn the tables during the break, and then there's a line out the door for the next set.
Wow.
And it's advertised, and it's not funded by any kind of government entity, but they are advertised through Nashville tourism and things like that. So that's what I'm saying. We have the products here. We just don't have a place to sell them.
We have Lonnie McFadden,
Yeah, Lonnie's a treasure.
just that.
Yeah,
And he's world renowned.
absolutely.
His brother, and he performs Friday and Saturday nights at Lonnie's Reno Club. He's introduced.
Right.
And that is the standard that we should be looking for in this community. When you take someone with that amount of talent who can bring in people, they shut up, they listen to him, they watch him dance. He's fantastic. He can do it all. And there's opportunity. That to me, he's the model. He's the standard that we should be looking at.
Right.
And he's one type of music. He's I love his music. But Henry's got a whole new. Chris, you have we've all got our own little way of doing things.
Yeah.
That to me, he's the standard, and he's a guy who is so generous with his knowledge and his experience that he could mentor, I think, a lot of young people like you.
As we wrap up here, what's one thing you'd like to see this organization do to help you all do what you do? Is there anything that comes to mind that would be helpful, useful, practical going forward?
I think just to also tie into that, I think having a venue that's interested in the long-term commitment of starting something that isn't like, you're not going to immediately pull a big crowd when you're presenting music immediately, but having the commitment of knowing that a community will get built would be helpful. So not just like a monthly series, not just like one summer festival, but something that's consistent and committed to like showcasing how incredible the art is. Like you got to have somebody who loves it, which we have in this. Would be cool. I don't know. Yeah, jazz is for the community. That's what it's about. That's why Johnson County doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
It's like
Michael?
everybody lives.
Partner with Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors and KC Jazz Alive. Live Jazz KC, I meant to say. Live Jazz KC, Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors, and this organization, KC Jazz Alive. I would love to see those three organizations do something
And push.
together.
Yeah, together.
Pull
Yeah.
together. Maybe a concert series, maybe a steak and a jazz festival, maybe something. I think the synergy that could come from that could be pretty cool, pretty exciting. The best thing that this organization can do is to do what you're doing, but ramp up membership. I'm not interested in audiences. I'm interested in new audiences. That's all I want. All I want to do is be shaking hands with people who said, I haven't heard of you, man. Wow, yeah. You know, and the following is important, and it's great. And followings are great. And as you develop your following, that's wonderful. But there's also new, and that's really important too, because that helps everything and everybody. The hotels that have the music venues, they have it made because they have built-in new audiences, itinerant, traveling people who come in and check it out. But then they go home, then they leave, you know? So there's a downside to it. So those people who are buying the talent for those rooms, they really don't have to change it up very much because it's always different people. Now that said, there are also the regulars who go to those places too. The local folks too. Right. So it's a mixture of your local audience and your itinerant audience. Like when I put my stuff out there on social media, I always hit Visit KC and NTDF, the neighborhood development, you know, that one. I always try to hit those too. And I've even posting on Denver and San Antonio and Chicago, my session that I do, saying, hey, musicians, if you happen to be in Kansas City, stop by, because you never know. Now, I can't sit and do that for 12 hours a day, you know, but once in a while, I'll do that just to try to be random and see what will happen. But those are the two things I'd like to see happen, is the trifecta of the three supporting jazz organizations of Kansas City do something, and just build your own membership more.
Chris?
One thing I would love to see is, and you know, without knowing what kind of resources are available, something that a friend of mine, Corey Weeds, does in Vancouver is he routinely brings in big names and pairs them with local musicians. And what I mean is, like, he'll bring in Mike Ladon, who's a very, very storied pianist and organist, and he'll pair them with other musicians from Vancouver. They put on a show. Right. That's good for everybody involved because people want to come see Mike Ladon perform, but now they're also being introduced to the cats that are killing it on the local front. Mm-hmm. So if there's dollars to bring in Houston person to come play with a trio from Kansas City, or you bring in, you know, any kind of name that's going to draw a crowd into a venue, I think that kind of lifts all boats.
Great thoughts. Henry, Chris, Michael, give them a round of applause, folks. Did a great job. Henry, you hung in there really well. Did a great job. Thank you so much.
Can I do a commercial? My band, Paganova, is a 5-piece band. We're going to be on KPR tomorrow night, Thursday, at 9:06 p.m. So Bob McWilliams had us into the recording studio. So that's my quintet, Paganova. So we have a record on Capri Records. So.
That's it. You guys got to plug everything all the time. I don't know you guys, but if you plug yourself all the time, that way I can find out about you.
Buy a CD from my trunk.
Did you bring
Yes.
Awesome.
$15.
Also, a round of applause for Steve Kraske. And I came in tonight, was going to have two things I wanted to say at the end, but after this discussion, I'm going to add in a third. My wife and I have regularly gone to St. Louis to go to the Jazz Bistro to hear acts there, and I've said for a long time Kansas City needs a similar type of jazz dinner club. I don't have the money to make an investment like that, but I'm going to throw my name out there as a point person. If you are somebody that is looking to do an investment in something like that, come talk to me. Get my business card. This is not a KC Jazz Alive thing. This is a Daryl McCaig thing that I'm talking about. I really want to see this happen, and if we can get a group of people that do want to invest in something, especially Johnson County, because that's where I live too, I would really like to see that happen. So come talk to me about that. Right now, several of us are going to walk down the street to the VU Lounge where Michael plays every Wednesday night with an open mic session. So we're inviting you to walk along with us and go down there and listen to some live music. My last thing that I want to say, mark your calendars for March 5th. We're going to be back in this room. And this is going to be a session that is actually kind of driven by some of you. We've had people saying, why aren't you having more women on your panel? And when they said that, my first knee-jerk reaction was like, I've had several women on the panel in the last 3 years, and I started calculating it up. It's like, yeah, we've had 25, maybe 30% women on our panel in the last 3 years. And then I looked at my list of musicians, and there's only 10% of the people in that list that are female. So my question is, why this disparity? How can we make Kansas City jazz a more inclusive environment? So on March 5th, we're going to have Jackie Myers, a pianist that plays here in town, Ariana Namati, a saxophonist, and then Cara Smith, who is a young vocalist who's also involved with the education program at the American Jazz Museum. And I'm very excited about what they're going to be able to share with us. So we hope to see you there. Please let your friends know about it. Bring your friends, because I think this will be a very important session. So thank you all.